The question of how to turn boys into men is a perpetual struggle of any community seeking to survive beyond a few generations. This general question is one we've seen come across our feed numerous times here on this show, and one particular concern is how soon young men should start engaging with hard physical labor, lifting weights, and feats of endurance. The question itself reveals much about the current softness of the society we live in, but before we start hurling insults at anyone directly, some explanation is in order. You see, many parents today have been taught to believe that their boys all the way up into their teenage years are more akin to fragile ice sculptures than they are to men, whose duty it is to stand in the breach defending and providing for their people. For decades, parents were told that strength training at a young age could damage their boys' growth plates and stunt their growth, keeping them from reaching their full potential as adults. Combine this with the modern belief that enforcing strict discipline and behavioral standards with your children will somehow emotionally damage them for life, and you find yourself in our cultural moment. In America today, over 20% of boys between the ages of 6 and 18 classify as obese. This percentage has risen by 300% since 1975. What has changed in the last 50 years? Well, the invention of computers, cell phones, and video games, just to name a few. These technological advancements have dramatically shifted the standard way an American boy lives during his most formative years. Gone are the summer days of running off into the woods to build forts and wage mock war against the rest of the neighborhood boys until the sun goes down. Instead, young men run to their computers and gaming consoles to pretend at this activity on a high-definition screen while they snack on ultra-processed food products. By simply looking accurately at nature and history, we can see clearly that the state of our young men's lives today is an inversion of the way God designed boys to behave. But what does Scripture say? After all, we don't believe that computers, phones, or games are sinful in and of themselves, and the Bible doesn't directly address them. But what wisdom does it offer us in regard to building good men prepared to bear life's burdens? Lamentations 3:27 says, "It is good for a man that he bear the yoke in his youth." And Proverbs 20:29 tells us that the glory of young men is their strength. If we look at the life of a biblical hero like King David, we find that even in his youth, he participated in the household occupation as a shepherd. This was no soft, safe profession. He slept out in the field, moved through the hills and mountains of Israel on foot, and violently defended the flock under his charge. In fact, when David was charged with being only a youth after his offer to face the giant Goliath in one-on-one combat, he responded that he had been fighting bears and lions for some time now. Filled with the Spirit of God, he was undaunted in the face of a heathen enemy. So why do we treat our boys like they might break under the slightest strain? We shouldn't. Rather, we should look at them and envision the man that they could be, the man that we would be proud to send out into the world someday, tempered, sharpened, and prepared to strike fear into the enemies of God. All right, guys, welcome back to the. Actually, this is a whole new world now. This is no longer the Hardman podcast. This is the Brutal American podcast. So, welcome to the Brutal American.
Welcome to the first time,
the first ever Brutal American show. Yeah, pretty excited about that. Obviously, quite a few things have been moving in that direction with this show for a bit now. Ethan and I took it over. Paywall show became Brutal American, and we've slowly just been backing away from the homoerotic name as much as we possibly could.
Was that the reason?
What basically happened was Ethan was like, "I'm never going to wear a t-shirt that says that."
I wouldn't want to. I would. You think about going to Home Depot with a Hardman podcast shirt on. I just don't know if I could do it.
Yeah, it would be a tough sell. I'm not gonna lie. Like I have a hard time like making anything for you guys that says Hardman on it. So we've been giving Eric a super hard time about it. There've been a lot of basement jokes about that for years now, and here we are. Like all honor that's due to the Hardman podcast, but this is the Brutal American show now. So welcome. Everything's changing over, so we're excited about that. Today, obviously, we talked a little bit in the cold open about like turning boys into men. What does that look like? We kind of alluded to the general softness in our society, which is a perennial topic on this show. But how does it actually play itself out in the raising of our youth, particularly boys? And like, how does the egalitarianism and the feminism and everything kind of play into the way that we raise boys now compared to how we used to do it. And then what are the impacts that are being had? I think that we're still really at the beginning of seeing what kind of fruit this is going to bear in society, because even my generation, I'm 30, so I remember being, I think, like maybe an 8th grader or a freshman in high school when my first buddy got a BlackBerry, and it was like a huge thing. Before that, you were like T9 texting, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I didn't have a cell phone until I was like being picked up from public school sports.
But now it's ubiquitous.
But everyone has them now.
Yeah.
All kids, like if a kid has a phone, it's a smartphone for the most part. There are families here who are doing a really good job of this, and have protections on their stuff, and they're having basically their sons have dumb phones,
gab phones.
It's really useful to be able to communicate with your kid when he's out doing stuff,
or especially they start driving.
Yeah.
A bunch of my high schoolers are driving.
Yeah.
Like it would seem irresponsible to send them out without a phone now.
When it's so readily available to give them one.
Yeah.
So I really think that we're going to continue to see the degradation and basically like the babying of men all the way into like their late 20s and like early 30s, I think is where the stage is now, where you basically have grown boy child people, like they're just not adults.
The whole idea of adolescence is kind of manufactured.
It's a brand new thing.
Like within the last 5 minutes, like we have this adolescent period.
Yeah.
And it continues to get bigger and bigger, right?
Yeah.
We used to you used to go from boy to man, right? And that happened, basically based on what you were doing, right? Are you being educated? Are you helping dad, or are you doing it on your own? Like,
right.
are you going out and making your fortune? And that transition happened really fast.
There were rites of passage that marked those, like the changing of these phases in your life.
Yeah. And now with education being what it is, and probably back to the Industrial Revolution where we had, and through the Depression, like Great Depression and YMCA culture and things like that, like where you didn't have, boys couldn't just go and get a job. And so you have this area, like, what do we do with them? And it's just grown and grown until like now, like you said, like you can be in mid-20s and still be like functionally a child. Yeah.
It's sort of extended because the school system has extended that far as well. Like, well, I'm still in school and you're 26 or whatever.
Yeah. What do you do? I mean, this is a classic thing. Everybody knows this, but like, graduate high school and you go to college for 4, maybe 5, maybe 6 years, depending on how many times you change your major. Mm-hmm. Then you're like, well, what am I going to do? I'll go to grad school and we'll do another 3 or 4 years, or I'll get an MBA. And like, yeah, you could be in your late 20s before you ever have a real job.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a huge problem. Like I said, I think it's going to continue to get worse. In all honesty, it's one of the reasons we wanted to talk about this, because it's something that if you're going to fix it, you have to start really early. It can't be something that you all of a sudden you realize with your son when he's 17, 18, 19 that he's still a child and like you're way behind at that point. This has to start really early.
Yeah, once you realize that, you wake up, you're like, my 14-year-old or my 18-year-old is a problem. Like, it's way too late to fix it.
It's going to be a really, really difficult time to repent of all of that and change it and like move directions with someone who's already so far off into this ditch of basically not having any personal responsibility, not understanding what the world needs from them, what they're actually for. Brian talks about this all the time. Like, human beings really need to understand what they're made for. And I think that's one of the primary problems at the basis of this, is that so many young men have no idea what they're for. And so I think this starts early, connecting like all of these physical things and the tests and sports and lifting and all of that stuff, but attaching it to the why, like why are we doing this, is extremely important. So we'll dig further into that as well. But I think right off the bat, I had someone in the church here ask me about this recently, and it's no, like, I'm not throwing shade at them, but they genuinely have questions. And they're like, well, there's this old wives' tale that if my son starts lifting weights before he hits puberty or whatever, that it's going to stunt his growth and it's going to destroy his growth plates. Or, he could have been 6'2", but now he's going to be 5'8".
I thought that was coffee.
It's like, it literally is like, there's so many wives' tales about this. And I just wanted, like, that is simply not true. There's no factual scientific evidence behind any of that. And I think it's important for us to start, even if there was some study that came out. It was like, this kid started lifting weights really heavy when he was 12. And now scientists say he would have been 6 foot tall, but instead he's 5'7". Who cares? Like, they're so wrong about everything all the time. Stop listening.
They're
to
just
them.
making stuff up.
They literally just make stuff up.
Yeah.
And if you look back at human history, it's really obvious that as soon as a boy could walk, basically, he started getting handed work to do. Like, here, you're going to help carry stuff. Here, you're going to help take care of animals. Here, you're going to help us when it's time to harvest all of this wheat. Whatever the thing was, he was, as soon as humanly possible, inserted basically into the family workforce.
Yeah. And I actually think that's part of the overall problem. Like, if you're going to identify, like, we're going to talk about like what to do about it or how to do it well. But the overall problem I would describe as houses are for entertainment. They're basically for consumers. And the problem is that we act this way, and we raise our children to believe that homes are made for consumption.
Yeah.
It's a place where you eat and you sleep and you play video games and watch movies. And it's basically like, what do I get out of this place? Right. Just like if you go to the gas station, fill up, it's like I go home and fill up, and then I go out and do whatever I think I'm made to do. Or maybe it's like, you're setting yourself up to end up in your mom's basement, kind of thing, because of that kind of mentality. But that's the overall shift. If I was to like paint the vision, would be the overall shift is like, no, like, you're a contributing member of this family. It's starting at very early ages, right? From where they can clear the table and load the dishwasher and pick up their room and put their own clothes away. Like, it can happen much earlier than I think we give our kids credit for. Mm-hmm. And I think we do them a huge disservice to not treat them like, and train them to be contributing members of the family instead of just consumers.
Yeah, we tend to treat them like they're just going to be children forever, rather than treating them like they will soon be adults.
Yep.
And what you're doing is you're trying to raise adults, not children.
And adults that you like and you want to be around.
You would
want to
respect
hang out.
and
You
like
want to hang out with.
find enjoyable to look at, right?
Yeah.
Like, all of those things are really important. So I think the thing here is like, your boy isn't going to die from blisters on his hands. He needs challenges just as much as he needs encouragement. And so like, we have to operate on that principle. Like, here are the things especially boys need. Little girls need love and affection, especially from their fathers. Little boys need challenges and encouragement that they can complete the task at hand. But if it's not something that's actually challenging to them, it's not worth their time. You find pretty quickly that if it's not somewhat dangerous or difficult or painful, they really aren't interested. And, every time our boys are hanging out, they end up outside doing something somewhat perilous, where you're like, yeah, is this a good idea? Like, at what point do we step in and go, all right, we're not going to jump off of that thing?
There's a fine line, obviously 2 ditches of it, no challenge at all, right? It doesn't hurt, doesn't cost anything. And then there's also, I'm giving you a task you actually can't do. Like, I'm not looking at your frame and giving you something that you're fit for, but I'm just like overburdening. Like, there is that line, and we're a whole lot closer to one ditch than the other, but there is a ditch on the other side.
Yeah, for sure. So I think to kind of like, that's kind of giving all of the information, and the main message there is that your son needs physical challenges. Like, don't hold things back from him. Anything that, the father of the household is doing, the son should be doing in some capacity or another, even if it's a much lower scale. He should be doing things like his dad is, because that's what he's doing. He's preparing to be his father someday.
And the thing is, naturally they want to.
Yeah.
Like, we're doing the workout that you made for this upcoming test, and I'm doing box jumps. I leave the room, and what my kids are doing box jumps.
Yep.
That box has been there for months and months, and they don't know what it's for. And
Right.
They see me doing box jumps, they want to do box jumps.
Yep. It is like, without fail, mine's the same way. We do the push-ups all the time. The boys do the push-ups. That's all he ever wants to do is push-ups. Now, his push-ups are terrible. He's not doing real push-ups yet, but it's okay because the affection's there, the drive's there, the correct aim is in place, and now we can start making progress in the right direction. But if he doesn't have that example in front of him, if he's not pointing at the right stuff, then we're sort of dead in the water. And what happens is not that he would just stay in this neutral state until it's time to pick things up. No, he's gonna deteriorate. He's gonna go in the wrong direction if he's not going in the right direction. There's no neutrality. He's not gonna just stay exactly where you leave him plop down. He's gonna move somewhere. Mm-hmm. So you want to make sure that that's in the right direction. As far as physical exertion stuff goes, I think that principle wise, and we'll get into a lot of the specifics of what we're doing with the here with the boys at Titus 2, with our sons even, and like what does the program look like? How often are they lifting? What does that lifting look like on a weekly basis? Like what's a weekly block of training look like? We'll get into all of those specifics in the after hour show behind the paywall. So go check out the after hour show over there at the Brutal American on Patreon. But I did want to talk about mainly kind of the additional things that you're probably not thinking about that your boys should gain through things like physical challenges, intense labor, even like sports, right? Like all of these physical things that you're setting in front of him as challenges and tasks. What are the other things that he's going to get out of it? So, I mean, first of all, physical exertion for the sake of physicality is a good enough reason, in my opinion. You want your son to be strong, and it's going to play into the rest of his life. My buddy Alex talks about this all the time. He's like, the best way to make your like clothing and style look better is for you to be jacked. He's like, it's really hard to not be impressive if you are muscular and have low body fat. Like those things are the most simple things you could possibly do that show some level of confidence and ability to people when you walk into a room. The other thing is that you gain confidence through that stuff. Yeah. You know, like if you've been through physical hardship and come out the other side and realize that you didn't die, it gives you a certain level of like mental fortitude going into the next thing.
Yeah, and like a reasonable amount, not false bravado, not thinking.
Correct.
You know, we've talked about this, but not thinking more highly of yourself than you ought, but like actual confidence because you have experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really, really important. So the biggest things there are like mental fortitude, confidence. Another one that I did want to touch on is just practical skills. The skills that your son is going to learn from being really good with an Xbox controller in his hand probably aren't going to translate all that well to real life scenarios. It won't help him change a tire, period. And so like if you're taking him and doing real things with him, which let's be very clear here, is an additional workload for you as a father.
Oh, 100%.
It's difficult.
It's not at different ages, right? If 14-year-old, probably helpful changing the tire.
Sure.
Certain ages.
4.
Yeah, I'm not going to name anybody because they listen, right? But the older they get, obviously, the more helpful they get. But they're not going to be helpful if you don't start them early,
right? And
some of it too is like the attitude toward things, where you're like, I know I've got to change the flapper in the toilet because it's running on. They probably can't help you do that, but just being there, seeing you doing it, I think does kind of set in their mind like, oh no, Dad does this kind of thing, and then they'll get to a point where they'll help you, and then as adults, they will be the kind of people that are like, no, I can do that. I can figure it out. Like I can take care of that thing.
Absolutely. I think the level of importance and the trajectory through his life that standing next to you while you do something, just holding a screwdriver, it doesn't seem valuable in the moment, but over time it's going to grow exponentially to the point where he is the one doing the thing and you're the one standing there watching him.
Yeah.
Like I think many people have been in those scenarios where like one day your son's like, oh yeah, I know how to do that. And you're like, when did this happen? Yeah. Right. And, but that has to start somewhere. Like you've got to be intentional about it. So, mental fortitude, confidence, practical skills. The one that I did want to expound on a good bit is actually aggression. And I think this is one that is often like really overlooked, especially in Christian communities. We look at this often as a negative, and it's a huge problem. Because like we mentioned, the egalitarian, the feminist age that we live in, aggression is seen as a negative, but rightly ordered, it's actually not. Just like strength or power, aggression is a tool. So used rightly, it's a virtue. Used wrongly, it can be sin. But aggression is something that actually is in the nature of a man. And you'll find that it's that way with boys as well. Like they tend to be some level of aggressive, especially if they're provoked, right? And so I think the thing here is not to stamp that out, but rather to figure out how to hone it and sharpen it and channel it in the right directions.
Yeah, I mean, this is a natural thing that if you have boys, you see it, right? Yeah. It's not something they have to be taught. But if it's not honed, it will turn into sin, like without the Christian virtues associated with it, and when to pull out the sword, it will turn into sin. And so it has to be shaped properly, and that the sword has to be pointed in the right direction at the enemy when appropriate. I do think if this kind of thing is not honed and sharpened and taught how to behave, you end up with one of two things: like somebody who's wicked and will use aggression wickedly, or frankly, trying to think of a better word, but like a coward, right? Yeah. Who has no aggression, who it has never been taught how to be aggressive, and basically just end up as a wimp.
Yeah, and that both are bad. Arguably, the second is worse.
Oh, I mean, they're both bad. They're both sin.
They're both sin.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to, as early as possible, take a boy and go, here's this aggression. Here's what we're going to do with it. We're actually going to channel it back at you. And that's exactly what something like really heavy sets of deadlifts does. Is you go, great, you're super aggressive. We're going to hurt you with it and make you better. Here's how we're going to channel this in a productive way. And there are numerous different avenues for doing this, but I think the ability to take that that aggression and use it to for self-betterment is actually a really, really important path of, this circular feedback loop. And the boy very quickly figures out, oh, when I take this aggression, which is actually feels good. Like this is what testosterone is. If you ever listen to I'm sure you've seen the Huberman clip, if you've seen anything from Huberman, but he talks about the fact that testosterone makes effort feel good. And that's what we're talking about. It's like we're taking this feedback loop that makes a boy better and presenting it to him and going, here's how you can get better at literally anything in your life. Apply aggression at the work that needs to actually be done instead of to useless things.
Yeah. And it obviously looks different at different ages, right? Mm-hmm. When your 5-year-old has a wooden sword and wants to sword fight you, you're letting him experience some of that, right? And you say, nope, you hit me with the sword, you don't hit your sister with the sword. You channel it. And when they're older and they're the middle linebacker, you'd say, and you hit the running back as hard as you can, right? And you have different avenues where you can say no, this is the place for violence, this is a place for aggression, this is a place for reckless abandon. And but it's not in church, right? It's not in school. You have times where you can exercise this, and you have times where you have to restrain it. And knowing the difference is one of those wisdom principles that you have to instill in the boys.
I think this is potentially why we've lost so much of the chivalry in men in our society, is because instead of trying to channel the aggression and go, here's where that is applicable and good, we've just tried to crush it. And so now it's the cat's out of the bag. And now what do you do with it? You have gang violence and every other terrible thing that you can think of that's just young men that don't know what to do with all of this aggression. But also because it's just running rampant, they don't know how to contain it. And so when you do step into the dance or the church service or, Monday morning at school, whatever it is, the aggression's still there, and it shouldn't be, because it's not being released in these other areas that are good. And Ben and I were talking about this the other day, and the middle linebacker thing is a perfect example. And I remember we ran a 3-4, so I was an inside backer, but we didn't have a middle. And there was a team that would run the power eye basically, but out of the shotgun. And they would line up 2 kids in the backfield that were big, strong, athletic kids, and they would put their running back behind them. And everyone knew when they line up in this situation with this formation, here's what they're going to do. And it was not disguised. There was no trickery. It was literally guard's going to block down, tackle's going to block out. And there's 3 kids. There's 600 pounds of human being coming through this hole as fast as humanly possible. And whatever gets in the way is probably going to get smashed. And the only way to respond to that is to meet the force with excessive force. And it's just a nature of aggression to be able to exert the strength of will to go, I know what's about to happen. Here in about 3 seconds, they're going to snap the ball, and I have to throw my face at these people as hard as humanly possible in the attempt to just stop them from gaining a few yards. And that's a that's a really important thing for a man to be able to learn, that principled skill of being able to identify the situation and then go, oh, I know what's about to happen right here.
Yeah. And even the physicality there of it, until you've been there and you learn the lesson that unless I hit him as hard as I can, it's going to hurt me.
It'll hurt me if I don't.
If I don't, right? And instead of like because the brain wants you to think like, if I just kind of stand there and take it, like it won't be as bad. That's going to be way worse than if you don't hit him as hard as you can.
Yeah.
And just that lesson is one that you don't get every day, like wrestling or in contact sports, like you figure it out. But especially in that scenario, like there's nothing that teaches that like full contact football.
Right. Yeah. The kind of like collision sports like that involve that level of tenacity and physicality are ways to train that aggression. And even Ben, he was talking about soccer and like he was a defender and he remembers very clearly. He was like, I wasn't very good, but like I did figure out I'm bigger than most of these kids. And at some point, it clicked that if I go to the ball like that person's not even there, then usually I win. Instead of like tiptoeing up and then preparing for the collision and doing all these things, like what if I just run through that person? And he was like, then I got way better after I figured that out, right? But it takes actually being there, the experiential knowledge to actually get to that point. And it's not useless. You think that this is going to be, useless after you leave whatever sport it is, wrestling or football or soccer, whatever it is. But the reality is that you're going to be, as a man, you're going to be confronted with situations like that for the rest of your life where you go, this conversation is going to be painful. I'm not going to enjoy this. This is going to be awkward. I don't want to go do this. Nonetheless, here we go. And like the ability to kind of shut your mind off and just go do what needs to be done is an extremely important skill.
I mean, you're kind of describing like just courage, right? Like you can have an awkward conversation with a brother in Christ, with somebody that you need to talk through sin issues with or whatever, that you have to do. But and nobody's hitting anybody, but like it's kind of the same muscle of like courage, right? Mm-hmm. Where you're like, I know if I tiptoe around this, if I avoid it, if I try to find a way to not let it happen, it's going to be worse.
I think this is another one of those examples where the physical portion of our lives is actually the more elementary one. And the higher level stuff is actually the non-physical stuff. So once again, that reality is still, that structure is still in place because you actually figure out once you've done both of these things, I would actually rather just like smash someone with my face than have to have this conversation because it's easier. Like it's not going to hurt for as long. It's not as awkward. And there's no it doesn't require as much of me actually.
Yeah.
It seems like it does if you haven't been there, but it really doesn't. And so it's a stepping stone toward these greater realities that you're going to move into as you mature as a man. I think that strength of will, like you said, courage for sure, but strength of will is one of those things that's really important here. It's a conversation that we have with the boys. I do with them fairly often, where we get to portions in a workout where we're no longer just doing percentage work. And we're no longer just going, yep, that was a good set. Good job. Like you did all the reps and then you racked the bar and you could tell there was some exertion there, but it didn't kill you. And instead we get to the part where I'm going, I want you to see if you can black out. I want to see if you can make yourself fall unconscious right here.
You're talking about like burnout or
yes.
where they're going from station to station and there's no rest and it's a cardio exercise, right?
Cardio or muscle endurance, whatever it is. It could be sets of 20 on back squat, or it could be the circuit stuff like that, where, a portion of it is they're going to do a wall sit for 2 minutes at a time. And you're like, all of you know that you can't actually accomplish that. Nonetheless, that's the task. And I don't care if your legs are shaking. That's what we have in front of us. We're going to do burpees for the next 5 minutes. How many burpees can you do in 5 minutes? And 5 minutes is not a very long time until you're doing burpees, right? And so
it feels like it.
One of the things that we regularly talk about is turning their minds off. And so I looked up the definition of intelligence. Like, what does it mean to be intelligent? It's the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills. And so I think it's not thought of this way very often, as far as I know, but a portion of intelligence is knowing when to stop thinking and when to act. And And that's actually really, really important. If you're the kind of intelligence that can't turn your brain off long enough to do what needs to be done, that's actually a potential weakness in a man.
Yeah. Or you could be really smart, book smart or street smart. But if you can't turn that basically process and decision-making into action, like what's the good of it?
Right. And so I think the ability to go, this is going to hurt really bad, I'm going to do it anyways, and then shut off that portion of your brain. Ben and I were talking about it, and he's talking about like climbing, like doing big rock wall climbing stuff, where there's inevitably an element of fear, where you get to a point and you're going, I might fall, and I probably won't die, but it's going to hurt really bad. And being able to like look at that portion of your brain and like see it and then go, okay. And then like put it away and like put it back in the drawer and go, not useful right now. It actually isn't helpful for me to think about falling. What I need to think about with all of my effort is the thing that I actually need to do.
Yeah. It's kind of the compartmentalization that men kind of have more naturally of being able, like, especially in a situation where there's danger or somebody's hurt or there's an emergency, a car accident, some kid broke his arm or his leg, or like where you need to be decisive, you need to be assertive, you need to, take control of the situation. And like, they don't happen every day, but we haven't been alive that long, and like they happen every once in a while. Mm-hmm. And if that's the kind where you have like decision paralysis, analysis paralysis, and you just like, well, what about this and this, and all anxiety takes over. Like that's not the kind of man that is going to get you through that situation. Not the kind of man that we want our boys to grow into. And
so, if your son has experienced that feeling numerous times before he hits adulthood, all the better. You would rather that happen. You're preparing him for when it actually counts, like when the stakes are going to be high. Because when he's playing a little league football game, like no one cares, like it doesn't matter. But for him, it's earth shattering. Mm-hmm. And so putting him in those situations that for him are really, really high stress and high strain and physically demanding and, require all of this mental fortitude. Well, when the real game shows up, when he's at that point in his actual life, he's going to be way less fazed by it. He's going to be way more prepared for it. So it's super important. The next thing that I did want to cover, because I talked to my parents a little bit about this episode. Obviously, I'm getting a bunch of stuff from people that I've learned it from. So my mom did interject, and I thought she made a really good point. But she was basically discussing the fact that fathers have to take the lead on things like this. And oftentimes they have to tell their wives to obey and bite their tongues. And this is one of those uncomfortable truths in our time. But the overbearing helicopter mother, like the soccer mom stereotype, is just so prevalent, where a boy has all the potential in the world, but it's all just smothered. Because every time he gets anywhere close to failure or pain or some sort of like embarrassment, this angel swings in and like keeps him from ever being touched by any of that.
Yeah.
So that but the problem is that he never grows from it.
Yeah. Kind of the idea that the boy wants to climb the tree and he's way up there. And if he falls, there's no ropes, like he will break his arm or something. But, and the mom says, get down. And the dad has to be like, no, he needs to climb that tree.
Or even like, a kid's on a sports team and then, he messes something up and gets chewed by a coach or his dad after the game or whatever it is. And he needs that. But instead there's this protective blanket that comes in and shields him from any criticism ever. And so he never actually has taken any. And then suddenly he's expected to act like a man in the real world. He messes something up at his first job and he's never been spoken to like a man. Yeah. And it's a huge problem.
We had a real story that happened this week. We were having a contest. I did a marriage ceremony on Saturday. The father-in-law brought me a bottle of Blanton's from Japan that you can only get there, and it came in this this sleeve, this bag that Blanton's comes in, and all my kids are like, I want the bag. It's a Robin Hood bag. I'll put my money in it. And there's one bag, and I've got 3 boys that all want the bag. So we had a contest. Dart gun they got for Christmas, Nerf gun, set up a little action figure and said first one to shoot it down from 5 yards, gets the bag. And they went at it for probably 30 minutes before somebody hit it. And my second oldest boy was the first one to do it. And I'm praising him like, man, Gus, you're such a good shot. And my eldest was there, and obviously he's disappointed that he didn't win. Mm-hmm. And again, the lesson there, kind of like what we're talking about, was, look, there's no fixed pie of glory here. He won a competition. You need to learn how to be a good loser. Like, you're the oldest and you are the strongest and biggest, but that's not going to be the reality for the rest of your life. It is right now in our home. But you need to learn how to lose gracefully and let that, light a fire. And maybe, it's obviously, I don't know how much you can train with a dart gun, but if you go out and lose a, IDPA competition, like maybe you do more dry fire, and like just those kind of lessons of like, at those ages. And it hurt my feelings, right? Because he's getting upset because he's sad that he didn't win. He's disappointed in himself. But I'm like, this is something where you actually need to learn this lesson.
But if your wife steps in and goes, well, actually, honey, let's order 2 more so that the 2 kids who didn't win get 1 too.
Deal. We'll get some more. We'll get a case of beans.
In this particular scenario, maybe we do that. But like the principle there is like, mothers, do not keep your husbands from turning your boys into men. You will regret it at some point. When your son is unbearable and unruly and is doing all kinds of things that you wish he wouldn't do, and you have no authority and no sway over his opinions or convictions at all, because you didn't let your husband turn him into a man, you're going to regret that. And so it is painful now. She was talking about the fact that it's like, she remembers my dad doing, I don't know, whatever. Like, I remember he had me just like carrying rocks across our yard, just random crap. He would just find stuff for me to do. And her instinct to constantly like check on me and ask if I'm okay, and like, be the protective force, and it being like really difficult for her to like catch herself and stop herself from constantly interrupting the good work that was going on.
Don't you think today it's almost as prevalent with dads as it what you're describing with moms? Like, isn't this a huge problem for men as well? That have kind of adopted this culture, and like the helicopter, like kind of a helicopter dad, I think is a huge problem today. That it was the mom, and now it's kind of morphed into like both of them.
I do think that that's true. I think that even in those cases, still the operative factor at play is that he's doing that, not because he's constantly going, I don't want my son to, be tough or be honorable.
It's because he's longhoused.
It's because he's absolutely longhouse, and he knows that if he doesn't jump in and play his role exactly as he's been assigned and instructed to play it, he's going to get the cold shoulder later.
Yeah.
And he's making an exchange is what he's doing, I think, more often than not. Now, you do have guys that are just absolutely sold into this. They're just completely emasculated. But I think a lot of guys are doing this exchange. They're making a payment in that scenario that they're hoping will pay off later.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think that's definitely true. I also think, though, what are we talking? Millennials, helicopter parents, when we were kids, not uncommon. And then those people grow up into adults, never learn some of these lessons. Like they can't export what they don't have. Mm-hmm. And so there's probably a couple generations here where we are producing the wrong thing, and it's multiplying and amplifying instead of like what we're talking about is like course correction. Yeah.
It can be what we tend to do is like oversteer back into the middle of the road, and instead we end up in the other ditch. And there are also the scenarios where a kid is treated terribly as a child and is not taken care of at all. They're given no affection. Their life genuinely is ruled by a tyrant in a parent, typically fathers, and then they grow up and they have been hardened and tempered by that upbringing, and it ends up making them resilient, and so they end up being okay. But then they tend to be really soft-handed with their kids because they're trying not to be the parent that they had.
I've actually seen that, what you're describing, pretty frequently, where they genuinely were abused in different levels, and so but then they won't get anywhere close to that with their kids, and they're really doing them a disservice.
Yeah. So all things to watch out for, like men, women, fathers, mothers. You want your son to be challenged, to be pushed, and to honestly to experience failure, to experience pain, to experience those things, but in a controlled manner.
Yeah.
Right. Like in a way that you're not worried for his, like his life, but broken wrist, some bruises, those things actually end up being trophies for him down the road. Those are going to be his favorite stories to tell later. He's not going to be proud of like the football game where he never got touched.
Yeah. Or didn't get in because he was too afraid to hit the gap.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, stuff to think about there. I did want to talk about kind of like what as far as specifics are we talking about here practically? Like what can people be doing with their sons? Things that are options for them, because for instance, in our particular circumstance right now, we have high school boys, but we don't have a sports program. We don't have a football team for them to sign up and go play in. We don't have some of these more demanding ball sports type stuff. So in our scenario, it's going to look different than it did for our upbringing.
Yeah.
I would like to get to the point where we can offer those things to kids here at Refuge sometime in the future, but we're just not there yet. So what are the other things that we can be kind of doing to set ourselves up and set our sons up for success as they get older?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me is, my kids are younger, 8 and under, 9 and under, but carving out time and white space in the calendar to actually do things together. And what I guess to your point earlier is like, it takes longer. It's less efficient.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when my wife has my kids in the kitchen, like it's not, maybe the oldest right now it is, but up to very recently, like it wasn't because it was like just so much help and a force multiplier, right? It actually requires more supervision, more effort, and everything takes longer. So I think just carving out that time, I think about even like working out, like if the workout you programmed is supposed to take like 45 minutes, if my kids are in there and I'm paying any attention to them, it's going to take longer.
Yeah.
And that's just the nature of it. So I think just kind of carving out that time to incorporate them into things and invite them in. My boys are at the age where you're like, you don't have to invite them because they're showing, like James will come down on Sunday morning, he's getting dressed at 4 a.m. because he wants to come to church with me and he doesn't want to miss it. A couple times a week during duck season, he'll come down in camo. Dad, wake me up. It'll be like 3 o'clock in the morning. Dad, are we going duck hunting today? No, go back to bed. And so you don't have to invite them, but they have the zeal and they want to be there and be present and be involved. And so I think it's just a matter of like finding ways they can be involved. Mm-hmm. I think is really important. The garage gym, the home gym is I think a great opportunity. Like, in the scheme of things, like a light investment, we've talked about some of the things before you can buy and get, but a relatively light investment to be able to do that together.
If you guys want us to do an episode on what we would do to build out a home gym, we could definitely do that. Just let us know, send us a text or leave a comment wherever you're watching this. And that would be a fun episode to do. I would enjoy doing that. So if you're curious about that, just let us know. But I think that's absolutely
it's just
true.
Sandbags, right? You just buy sandbags?
Yeah, that's it.
That's all you need, right?
I'm just kidding. I have all kinds of stuff. It's absurd. I have way too much stuff, but I've been collecting it for like a decade. So, no, I think the gym stuff is great if you can take them to the gym with you. Obviously there's some scenarios, like if you're going to a big Planet Fitness or something like that, it's not going to be applicable to bring your 3-year-old with you to a Globo gym, but
like when I do back squats, my boys do air squats.
Yeah.
They ask what do I do? I'm like, do 30 air squats, and they're happy to be there and be involved and do it. I think that's a great one. I think working on vehicles, also takes some investment to be able to have the tools and things. But like, I do think in the long run, maybe like even though it's probably not worth your time, you might be making more per hour than it actually is worth to change the oil, rotate the tires, do the brakes. But I think in the long run, the investment in the children is worth it for that kind of thing. I think about yard work, just incorporating them into like, sweeping leaves, like raking up leaves and doing mulch and just, the normal kind of house care stuff that it takes a little bit of effort, I think are great opportunities to, and again, at different ages, they'll be more and less, they'll get to a point where they're like the high school boys where you can just be like, hey, go do the mulch in that flower bed.
Yeah.
And they'll do it. But until then, it takes more effort and you got to pick up after them and tell them how to do it right. But it's that kind of stuff is like invaluable.
Yeah. I don't remember being taught how to mow a yard. Like I don't remember the lesson, but I do remember getting to the point where like my dad would walk in the house and be like, man, that grass is getting real long, isn't it? And just kind of look at me like, you're mowing the yard tomorrow, right? and it's you do get to that point where they become actually useful. But even this surprised me the other day personally, but we had a ton of leaves in the yard, in the driveway, all over the place. And I was trying to figure out a way to get something in our chicken coop, like in the run, so that it's not just like moonscape mud all winter. Try to keep the chickens a little bit cleaner and just, won't smell as bad, all that good stuff. And I'm like, I don't know, I'm going to get all of these leaves and just carry them to the back and put them in that chicken run. And, of course, my 3-year-old wants to help me. And at first my instinct is to be like, get out of the way. Like you're just going to make things take longer. But come to find out, like you give him a snow shovel, he can hold it still while you rake leaves into it. And he's actually super helpful. Yeah. He ended up genuinely being helpful for me during that whole project, and he was enthralled by it. Like he just thought it was the coolest thing in the world that we were out there doing stuff in the yard together, and he got to help. And so now he's constantly asking when we're going to do more yard work stuff. And I think that was one of those, like one more experiential knowledge things, like one of those little shifts where I'm like, this is super important and good. And now I should be looking for more ways to incorporate him into work like that.
Yeah. Like snow shovels, same thing, right? They can push a little bit of snow off the deck. It certainly doesn't hurt anything. Like, it might not be perfect. You were telling me about when you guys were splitting wood, right? And he's got his hatchet and he's not actually doing anything, but it's fun for him. He gets to hold a hatchet and, and be supervised.
It's a little nerve wracking watching him grab, 1.5 foot long hatchet and swing it over his head and stick it into a block of cottonwood. But after about the 4th time, you're like sitting there, like kind of cringing watching him, and you figure out like he actually is more coordinated than I thought he was. And like, as long as he doesn't leave one of his hands down there, I think we'll be okay.
He's got shoes on.
Yeah, he's got rubber boots on. Like if it glances off and catches him in the shin or something, like it's going to cut his leg, but like it's not going to be something that we probably have to go to the hospital over. Like he's got pants on and we'll be fine. And pretty quick, he's like going and finding sticks in the yard and cutting them in half with a hatchet. And you're like, this is actually good, actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, stuff like that for sure.
I even think about I took the kids duck hunting a few times this year, and even that, I mean, it's a lot easier with a boat and they can be in the boat. And, I wouldn't take them before when we had to go out and, walk a mile, but, in the boat, they're there. They're not really doing anything. They're eating snacks, drinking hot chocolate, they're having a good time, but like they want to be there. And eventually they're going to get to the point where they can participate more. And it doesn't cost us that much to do that with them,
Yeah, for sure. So I think like manual labor stuff, anything that you can do when you're working on the yard or cars or whatever it is, that stuff's great. I do think that sports, this is going to be a discernment, like wisdom move, but like if you find something that you can get your kids in at a decently early age and have them get used to competition and failure and having to learn new skills, all of those things are really, really useful. Also, team sports are just massively useful for character building.
I agree with you. It's just so hard today to find something that is not 6 days a week and doubleheaders on Sunday. Like, I mean, it's just so hard to find any program. And so that's why we're, what we're doing with our older boys is doing something where you're practicing once a week or maybe twice a week, but like, it's not a huge commitment where your whole life revolves around this ball. Mm-hmm. I think these things kind of need to get renovated a lot in our current culture and like get back to what they probably should be, where you can throw a ball and you can catch a pass and you can do these skills that you should young boys should be able to do, but it doesn't cost you your soul to participate in these things. It's not worth it.
Yeah. One of the other things that we did quite a bit this past summer is camping.
Yeah.
Taking them out, Red Ryder BB guns and fishing poles, and hey, we're going to go sleep outside for a few days. And, you know, letting them be there when we're making fires and cooking food and just being a part of the entire process, getting them out of their comfort zone a little bit. They love it, first of all, but also there's just kind of a, hey, it's okay if you go to sleep tonight with dirt under your fingernails. Like, it's not going to be the end of the world. You don't have to take a shower every single night. You'll survive. And, you know, like, especially for boys, that stuff is great. You know, that feeling. And I remember this being a kid, like going camping and getting out of earshot of the campground as like an 8-year-old. And you're like, oh gosh, I'm like completely by myself out here. Yeah, I'm like, what? I'm like way out here. And even that stuff of like starting to have to pay attention to where you are, pay attention to your surroundings. All right, how do I get back to where I just came from? Because for most of your life up to that point, you just kind of get plopped in the car and buckled in, and then like wherever the vehicle goes is where you go. You're not really paying attention. You don't know how to get to, you know, your aunt and uncle's house from your house. You just know that it's over there. And so getting used to kind of like pointing those things out to your kids, getting them used to paying attention to their surroundings and being aware, especially the boys, to stuff like that, I think is really, really useful.
Yeah, absolutely.
What was the other one that I had written down here? Obviously strength and conditioning training is going to be huge. I think it's one of the best things that you can put your son into as early as possible. I know anecdotally, like my dad started me at the house. He had one of those wake up moments where he was like, I'm not happy with my current physical state. And he was like, we're going to change everything, and kind of flipped the switch. And overnight, you know, he was eating salads for lunch with cottage cheese on them.
South Beach diet.
He was fanatical about diet and, you know, workout routine. We did an hour-long workout at the end of every day, and he had a full-time job, so we would do it in the evening, usually like after dinner. Sometimes it would be really late, but 5-6 days a week we were working out, and I was doing it with him. And I would think I started in the 6th grade, doing like full-blown strength training stuff. Obviously, we had started playing football when I was way younger than that, so there had already been some physical training, but this was like full tilt. In your opinion,
so you kind of dispelled the rumor that like you have to be after puberty, but like in your opinion, how does it change if it's a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old or a 14-year-old, like programming and what are they doing? And it's probably not all the same, right? Yeah. Like the stuff that our high school boys are doing right now, our boys are not doing.
Right.
What the kind of lifts or the percentage of weight and things like that, but like generally, like how does that change as they grow?
I think you slowly move from a state of training coordination to the state of training speed and power, strength. So when you have, say, a 5-year-old, most of what you're doing is just body awareness type stuff. It's them, and you'll find them doing this stuff on their own because it's just sort of instinctual. It's the way that God made them. But what they want to do is constantly jump off of things and see how much force they can absorb, or they want to run as fast as they possibly can in a particular direction without any plan of stopping, right? Like they do things like that constantly because they're trying to figure out all of those motor skills and where to put their bodies in space. And so what you're basically teaching them is how to control that in a more instinctual way, but also be like cognitively like engaged, which is what kids playing soccer is. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, well, now there's a point of focus and it's the ball. Get the ball. And you go to a soccer game and there's a bunch of 4th graders playing soccer, and all of the parents the entire time are just going, get the ball, get the ball, get the ball, get the ball. And what you're actually teaching your kid to do is be able to move in space while they're looking at something else. So they know what their body is doing without having to look down at their feet to go through an agility ladder or whatever.
Like skiing.
Yeah.
Right. I took my oldest skiing last week, and same thing. Where like, you can't really describe it. You just kind of got to show them, like when you turn your head, like that's where you're going to go.
Everything's
right?
going that way.
And like, you know, you show them and then they figure it out. But
yeah,
you have like, there's no other way to do it other than to be out there on skis.
And another factor within that scenario is that also now your kid is having to look where they want to go while paying attention to all of the people that are moving around them so that they don't get smashed or run into someone.
Yep.
And so all of the things are moving at the same time. And what you're doing is you're not just training their body, but their brain to be able to pick up on movement, because this is actually the way that people learn skills, is by watching other people do them. you don't ever have someone like the trope where the guy at the bar like teaches the girl how to shoot pool and like he like uses her hands to do like that's not actually how you learn stuff, right? Yeah. You learn through imitation. And so the more you can watch people do something well, the better you're going to be at picking it up quickly. And so that's what you're doing, especially at that really young age, is coordination, teaching their eyes, like training their eyes to look to the right places, and then teaching body awareness. And then as you get older, what you're teaching is to be able to exert more massive force in those scenarios. And so with our boys now, we really did, even for them, even though they're, some of them are 7th, 8th, all the way up to, 12th grade, we really started with coordination stuff because they're teenagers, but they've never put a barbell on their back and squatted to full range of motion. And so the first time they do that, the bar waves all over the place. There's no balance to it. They're exerting way more, force with their right foot than their left. Or you lay them on a bench press and they like forget that they have feet. And you're like, you might want to have your feet on the ground, right? And all of those things are just things that are going to work better if they're taught. And the more you can get out in front of them, the better.
But we got 12-year-olds through 18-year-olds that hadn't done this before.
Correct.
But there's no reason why your 5-year-old can't master the things that they had to learn when they were 12 or 13.
Correct.
They could have learned those things way earlier.
Yes. If you, my son, I don't know where it is now. I think he's probably destroyed it, but he had a foam barbell, and it was basically just a little piece of like iron rod with foam wrapped around the bar. And then these little foam plates that went on it. And I think you can get them for like $30 on Amazon. But it's one of those things where, like the imitation game that we were talking about earlier, where you're doing box jumps and your sons want to do box jumps. Well, if a father's doing deadlifts or bench press or whatever, and his son has a little miniature lightweight barbell that he can do that same thing with, but there's no risk, there's no chance of him being hurt, but he can just control like, this works better. And, it feels smoother when the bar travels in a straight path instead of in an S pattern.
My hands don't, move when they move at the same time.
yeah, exactly. So you're just figuring out all those coordination factors, and like I said, like training your eyes, where to look and how to observe what's going on and move in space. But yeah, like Zingler Strength on Instagram is really, really good about this with his son. I think his son's probably 8 or 9, somewhere in there, but he sets up obstacle courses for him in his gym. And so he's not in there doing like 5x5 on barbell stuff. He's got him doing sprints and like sprint and then jump, and then sprint and then jump and catch yourself on this webbing, or sprint and jump and catch yourself on a pull-up bar, or, swing on the pull-up bar and then jump as far off of it as you can. All of the things that kids used to just do on playgrounds is really what you're having them do.
That was the other thing they've been doing is broad jumps.
Yeah.
I put a piece of tape on the ground at 96 inches, and they think that's the goal, and I'm gonna jump 96 inches. Like
they're like, it's like 14. Yeah, but it's those things, and like the other thing is that you're training affection in that scenario. Your sons are wanting to broad jump far. The likelihood that they would be obsessed with that when they're 5 or 6 or 4 or whatever it is, and then get to adulthood and not care about it even a lick, is slim. That affection, that like, hey, I should be able to do this thing in their head is going to last. Mm-hmm. And it's actually really, really important. And what you're basically doing is you're instilling the belief that I'm supposed to be strong, I'm supposed to be in good shape, I'm supposed to be physically capable. And that is what drives all of the desire to improve and train these things into adulthood, is the thought that like my father, who I respect more than any man in the world, thinks this is important. It must be important.
Yeah, you're training what's normative, right? If your dad changes the oil in the truck, that's normal, right? Mm-hmm. If your dad works out, that's normal. If your dad dry fires after the workout, like that's normal. And like these are things that like, because they don't know, they don't see in other houses. They just know what they have. They're like, well, my dad did this. We eat dinner together as a family. That's normal. And so, by the time they're 18 or 20, they're not wondering, is it, what should I do? They're just saying, well, I'm going to do what I did, what I grew up doing, and I love it. And that's what success looks like.
Right. you see this through all kinds of different cultures. Like I think in particular, one of the ones that I guess reference just because of my upbringing is, but rodeo culture is very much this way, where if a family is into rodeo and dad always rodeoed and he still goes to everything, his kids start rodeoing. Like you're looking at people going, how is that tiny human being on that horse right now? Like they're going to die, but this is normal for them. And so forever, that's just what they do. Like they own horses, they own cattle, they rodeo. And it just becomes a part of their life instinctually. You're training affection in that way, but it's not just affection. It's not like you're going, something like this person really likes this genre of music, but they don't play instruments or sing, or they've never been in a band. They just like that kind of music because that's the kind of music their dad listened to. No, it's more than that. They actually they're embodying it. They also have the behaviors that go along with it that matches the affection. And that part's really important because you're trying to build men who are virtuous and capable of aggression and exerting force in the right ways in their lives, which also means that they have control over it. Because what you'll find, there will be some kid who shows up, he's never been in an athletic program before, but somebody sees him walking down the hallway, and they're like, hey, why are you not on the football team? And they grab him, and he's freakishly athletic and strong, but what he ends up doing is just hurting himself because he doesn't know how to control any of that in a weight room setting or on a football field or on a basketball court or whatever it is. And so there's all of this power at his fingertips, but he's still somewhat infantile in the use of it. And so developing the control over those things is actually really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other thing this conversation made me think about is just when you think about your church or our church, and the scenario that happened in Minnesota last week or the week before, you have like a bunch of people come into your building and try to interrupt the service and whatever. Like when I envision our church, and if that were to happen, the thing that would like devastate me or embarrass me the most is like men not knowing how to act in that scenario. And I'm not critiquing what I haven't really watched the videos or anything. Like I don't actually know what
you're just envisioning what that would look like.
If that happened here and our men are like cowering the pews or not standing, in between them and their family, the protesters and their families, or trying to escort them out or trying to get them to leave, or the security, like we don't have a security team and nobody responds. And we just kind of let these, leftists destroy a Lord's Day worship service. And that's like one example I think about because I help, Jason run the security team, and it's like that is a lack of aggression, right? That is a lack of, I don't know how to act in this scenario, or I'm afraid, or I've never been here before. I've never thought about it. And I don't have, what it takes to be able to, do what my duty is in that environment. And I think about the church at large in America. And my fear is like most churches that would respond in a way that you would debrief and you say like, we should have done that better.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I immediately have this mental picture of a whole bunch of guys standing up very quickly here at Refuge. But I think that comes from, you have a ton of guys who are current or former military. You have a ton of guys who have competed in high levels of sports. You have a ton of guys who still train physically on a regular basis. You have a ton of guys who carry every single Sunday. And so you have all of these layers behind that man what they do is they enable him to see confrontation and not to shrink and go, I've been here before. I know what this is supposed to feel like. I know what's supposed to happen now. I've seen the down block and the out block and known that I have to go sacrifice my body to stop them from getting a first down. I know what this is. And I think that is to understand as a parent that you're training that already in your fourth grader or your 5-year-old or your teenage boy. You're getting him ready for that scenario because that's genuinely the world that we live in now.
Yeah. Unfortunately it is, right? That's the reality of it. That's the state of our nation, right? Like these things are not uncommon. They're going to continue to get more prevalent until we decide to grow a backbone and do something about it. And so we would be doing, I mean, it would be bad anyway, but especially given the state of our nation, if we don't prepare our kids for this kind of stuff.
Absolutely. I think that the last thing that I would mention, and it's something that I wish that I would have had a chance to be a little bit more involved in when I was a kid, but controlled combatives, I think, is one of those things that is very undervalued, particularly things like wrestling, grappling, jiu-jitsu, stuff where you actually have to make physical contact with other people. And it's not necessarily a team sport. It's kind of a one-on-one thing where, going in, it's just me and that guy over there. And, the few guys that I know that wrestled growing up are distinct. They stand out. You notice particular qualities about them.
Yeah,
their bearing.
Their ears all look the same.
They all have cauliflower ear. They have a particular bearing. They have a particular demeanor, a quiet confidence, a certain just felt capability. They carry some gravitas around because of the experience of not just going in and winning, a wrestling match or something, but also going in and just getting your rear end handed to you, numerous times, and being the smallest guy in the weight class or being the youngest kid, in this division or whatever it is. That stuff is extremely important. And there's a very particular factor of just one-on-one full scale confrontation that's going on there that I think is extremely formative for boys. So if you can find things like that to get them into, I think that's huge.
And it's a little bit easier than finding 11 guys to put together a football team, right?
Absolutely.
It doesn't take that much to do high school wrestling, right? Or find a gym that does BJJ or, whatever the things are. But the barrier to entry is pretty low.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's going to be something that serves him for the rest of his life. So, that's all the stuff that I kind of want to cover there as far as practical, things that you should be trying to think about and do to get your son more physically prepared. Don't shy away from giving him challenges, watching him fail, putting him in situations that are going to be tough for him and put some strain on him and maybe even exert some pain on him. Those are all good things. They're all formative things, and they're all things that he's going to have to do at some point in his life. So the sooner you start, the better.
Yeah, I think the last thought I had, just our kids being the ages they are, is it doesn't just happen. So some of it is natural to normal life and routines and vehicle maintenance or whatever and lawn mowing. But it actually takes a certain amount of planning, to be able to, we plan out security team training. We just had a Titus 2, FTX meeting, and we're planning these things for a specific purpose. And yeah, it's just like anything else, whether it's putting together your gym routine or, how are you going to spend your time? It just takes a little bit of planning, this quarter, this year, what are we going to accomplish? And just having that forethought and, a good enough plan and executing it well is, I think, invaluable.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Well, I think that's all for this one. As always, stay frosty, fight the good fight, act like men. We'll see you guys over on the Patreon.